Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number two, of Raven News Truth Seekers podcast. You are speaking to tonight's host, this evening's host, Newfoundland. Before we get into tonight, we are going to start with another introduction song. That's going to be, I think, a little theme of ours. And tonight we are showcasing the song called We Ain't Livin', written by a Canadian patriot, originally a Newfoundlander, now out of Ontario, Jay Spurvey. The song is called We Ain't Livin', and here we go. We're going to have a listen, and then we'll get started with tonight's episode.
It's been too long since I've seen Mom or a baseball game with Dad. We watch on separate TVs, we're told it ain't safe in the stands. I miss packed clubs and loud bands. I miss giving hugs and shaking hands. Just hold on a little longer, is what they're always saying. Now they're toying with our choices, and that's a game that I ain't playing. You got any questions, please don't ask. Sit down, shut up, and put on your mask. Hell no, 'cause I ain't afraid of dying. That's a bridge that we all cross, and we ain't ever gonna get back all these memories that we've lost. In the end, was it all worth it? Or did we make the world stop spinning? No, I ain't afraid of dying. I'm just scared that we ain't living. 2 weeks, a month, a year gone by. Now our whole world's changed. All these rules and regulations are nothing but insane. They took our freedoms and killed them. Is anybody worried about the children? Well, I ain't afraid of dying. That's a bridge that we all cross, but we ain't ever gonna get back all the memories that we've lost. In the end, was it all worth it? Or did we make the world stop spinning? No, I ain't afraid of dying. I'm just scared that we ain't living. Well, if you don't stand for something, you're gonna fall for everything. So take off the blindfold and burn the mask. Let's all join hands and sing. I ain't afraid of dying. That's a bridge that we all cross, but we ain't ever gonna get back all the memories that we've lost. In the end, was it all worth it? Or did we make the world stop spinning? No, I ain't afraid of dying. I'm just scared that we ain't living. No, I ain't afraid of dying. I'm just scared that we ain't living. So let's start living. And that's what I have to say about that.
All right, and we're back, everybody. Happy Wednesday to everyone. It is just after 9:30 in Newfoundland. I am your host, Newfoundland. That means, as you may have guessed, that I am from the province of Newfoundland. Raven News, basically an alternative media site based out of Newfoundland, focusing on Newfoundland, but caring about and covering all of Canadian news. If you are one of the people watching tonight who are likely sick of seeing my face and hearing my voice, you needn't worry. Dana will be back. Sunday is her episode on, I have it on good authority, digital ID. And so she will be there Sunday here, and I will be here as sort of a co-host background kind of thing, but that's going to be what's happening there. Somebody asked for the song link. It's in the chat coming up there now for you. So welcome everyone. Dana's going to be doing her thing Sunday 9:30 on digital ID right here on this very same platform. Wherever you're watching, you can see her on Sunday 9:30. Tonight's episode, I want to divorce my government, and here's why. Well, why would you? That's what you do when you're in an abusive relationship. You divorce that relationship. So the concept of tonight's episode is to recognize the pattern of the abuse cycle. You can look at that through the lens of domestic abuse, if you will. And then we're going to parallel that with the relationship we quote unquote enjoy as citizens with our government, and see if we can't find ourselves any comparisons to make there. So why would you divorce your government? Well, I'm here to make the case to you that we're in an abusive relationship with our government. This comes from some chats that I've had recently with some victims of domestic abuse who've shared their experiences with me, and it got some things sparking in my head. So abuse has its forms, and we're talking, say, domestic abuse, if you need a tangible to metaphor this to. It comes in its forms, and it comes in its stages, and some of those stages are easier to recognize than others. A lot of them are more tangible than others. You can talk about psychological, you can talk about emotional, you can talk about financial, and you can certainly talk about physical. And this pattern is a cycle that kind of rinses and repeats. And the idea is to first gain and then maintain control of the victim. The cycle of emotional and physiological abuse is often harder to recognize as an outsider. So in the case of, say, the domestic abuse, me as an outsider, I may find it hard to see somebody in my own life as a victim of the emotional and the physiological abuse, psychological abuse. And that might be because that generally happens in the privacy of the own home rather than in the public sphere, unless it does. And then, of course, it should be easy to recognize. But financial abuse, depending on what type of relationship you have with the quote unquote domestic abuse that's happening now. And I say that because we're thinking hypothetical now for a comparison. That usually generally doesn't happen until the victim has already become somewhat isolated from their own support system, isolated from their own friends and family and that type of thing. And possibly even their own job. And that's where the financial abuse comes in, because it's about financial control. That's how financial abuse plays out, is through financial control. And then, of course, the last stage that I mentioned was physical, and that's clearly more tangible, often easier to recognize, especially as an outsider looking in. And as a victim of abuse, oftentimes the victim will lie about the abuse that's occurring. Oftentimes they will lie about it in order to protect themselves, or in order to potentially, in their own mind, protect the abuser. Stockholm syndrome is one instance you can look into for such types of behaviors. They often feel tied to their abuser, and that can be emotional, of course, but that comes with being isolated from your support system from your friends and family that you once had. And if you're financially dependent upon your abuser, you are certainly tied to that person. And oftentimes then the abuser is a lot more comfortable with the amount of control already maintained, retained by them, and physical abuse follows. Now, that's not always the case. I'm not here to say every case occurs like that. There's obviously nuances here. I'm just giving you a general pattern to think about. Oftentimes, and especially in Stockholm Syndrome type cases and others, the victim ends up making excuses for their abusers. And they can lie to themselves about it. They can lie to others in their lives about it. Other things that occur, though, and these are the more serious ones, is they sometimes can end up blaming themselves, as in it was them who let themselves get to this point, which obviously isn't true. But it's certainly a pattern of behavior that exists. And the very last one, and in my mind, possibly the most important one, is they have their children affected by the abuse that's occurring to them. Whether or not the children are directly affected from firsthand abuse, they're psychologically, emotionally, and just generally affected secondhand by witnessing and realizing, processing what's happening to their parent. So that's from the domestic abuse side. Now, I want us to start thinking as citizens. Canada, United States, the UK, Ireland, Australia, wherever it is you guys are watching from. Think about the body of governance that rules over you, and think about the relationship that you have with them. I'm here to make the case that it's almost identical to the domestic abuse that we just kind of laid out here as a pattern. And not only that, but we as victims of this abuse are acting out and acting the way a typical, quote unquote, typical victim of domestic abuse does. We're reacting to it in real time. We're making excuses for our abusers, and we're shaming others that are trying to point out the abuse that our abusers are doing. And I'm not saying we as in me or people listening, but think about the people in your lives that are making excuses for the government for what they're doing, just following best advice, just doing what they're told, this type of thing. And we lie about the abuse. We don't even. I'm willing to bet that this is a bit of a hot button topic, and I'm willing to bet that there are many people that do not agree with the words I'm saying right now. They're going to lie and say that we are not being abused. Think about what went on in the last 3 years. The loss of bodily autonomy. That is an actual physical abuse that occurred on an entire populace. But I'm going to make the case now in a few minutes that every other category of this abuse is occurring to us in real time. Like, it's been occurring, it is occurring right now, it's planned to keep occurring, everything like that right now. We feel tied and dependent to our abuser because they've set up a system for us. And they basically control every aspect of the system. And even the ones that they don't, quote unquote, control directly are indirectly either controlled or heavily manipulated by them. So to remove yourself from the system that they've provided is very difficult. It requires a lot of resources of your own. It requires a lot of time, energy, and not everybody has all of the above, and it requires all of the above. So you do need the system, quote unquote, even like for a lot of things, and that is how we are tied in almost a financial way to our system. The financial abuse that we occurred also. I mean, the idea that you're not allowed to work in your country, in your province, in your town, unless you submitted to a medical treatment is physical abuse in the idea of having to follow through with it, but just the threat being made is financial abuse. And last but not least, as stated in the prior example, we're having our children affected by the abuse that we're receiving. And that can be directly if your children are being directly abused by the government. If you've kept them from that sphere, then we should they shouldn't be getting directly abused. But even still, the cognizance of witnessing their own parents being abused at the hands of a government that's meant to be your representation, that's meant to be, we hired you to look after us, not to force us to anything, not to make up new laws whenever you feel like it without consulting in a whole time. So having our children grow up in that sphere leads to them developing a certain perception of what government is, should be, could be, would be, all the way down the line. So how is it that the government is doing this? Now, I will say this. You have noticed it's just me on the panel tonight. I do plan on opening this discussion up, more so than just in the comment section. So if you want to join the stream and have your say, whether you want to tell me I'm right or wrong, and why you think that, the link will be posted here very shortly, and you can certainly join. All you require is a microphone. You don't need the camera. If you want to, absolutely, it makes it more personable, whatever. But really, all that's required is a microphone. So it's kind of like, if you're from Newfoundland, you know Paddy Daly, you know the Open Line show, the concept of a call-in radio show. This is like the people's answer to that. If you've ever had a call-in radio show in your own local town, wherever it is you're listening to, you know what I'm talking about. It's not a hard concept to grasp, by the way. There'll be a link here. All you need to do is click on that link. It'll bring you backstage here with me. Nobody can see you. Nobody can hear you until I decide I'm bringing you in, at which point I'll announce you. You can come in, and you can have a couple of minutes, depending, I guess, on how the discussion goes. So I will open that up. You can always participate in the comments, and I will certainly highlight comments here as I see them. But if you want to have your say that way, by all means. With that in mind, I'll make excuse me. With that in mind, I'm going to make my argument now of how the government is doing it to us, and that'll possibly stir somebody up to want to discuss that one way or another. So I mentioned that the abuse in the quote-unquote domestic abuse scenario that we had hypothesized on earlier had categories. It had forms and stages, as I referred to them. So we've got psychological, emotional, financial, and physical. So psychologically and emotionally, a lot of it happens through media control. You've got a state broadcaster. And I'm not here to tell you that it's the quote unquote Trudeau Liberals controlling CBC. That's not what I mean by a state broadcaster. A state broadcaster is a broadcaster of the state, and the state is the current governing party in relation with the Governor General and the Queen's Privy Council. So it doesn't matter which party is in power. It's not. I mean, right now it's Trudeau and the Liberals. before that there was Stephen Harper and his conservatives, and they were still the state using their state broadcaster through the Queen's Privy Council and the Governor General. It's a publicly funded, majority publicly funded, obviously, state broadcaster. So the control of the news cycle is a very easy thing to do. And that's not getting into quote unquote fake news or anything. The idea of releasing a story on a certain day in order to either A, gain attraction, or B, kind of have it swept under the rug. And even though the news cycle isn't as Monday to Friday as it used to be, it still kind of is. So releasing a story on a Friday has it kind of swept under the rug. They can also release something on a Monday and have the entire news cycle of that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday have it hammered. And you've seen that occur thousands of times. Well, maybe not thousands. But psychologically and emotionally, they abuse us in other ways. It's not just control of the media. It's things we're fed with Hollywood. Just the degeneracy of the propaganda, the pornography, the sports that were fed through mainstream culture. Propaganda, like, how many of you remember the mostly peaceful protests that occurred in BLM riots after George Floyd was murdered by a cop? There was a reporter standing in front of buildings that were on fire, describing it as mostly peaceful. It's very, very simply a lie. The lie is being displayed behind you, but it's mostly peaceful. So that is psychological abuse. To show you a lie, like to show you the truth and to tell you a lie and force you to accept the lie while you're staring at the truth, is psychological and emotional abuse. Absolutely. Financially, the idea of them manipulating the currency that we have with inflation, deflation, the fact that it's a fiat currency that's not even backed by anything, the fact that our bank was privatized after Trudeau Sr., the idea of compound interest, usury, these things, and what Dana's going to talk about on Sunday with the digital ID, which gets into digital currency. This is a form of financial abuse, and that doesn't get in. I never got into anything to do with COVID there at all yet. That's been happening since before COVID, this financial abuse. Now, financial abuse stepped up during COVID. How many of you lost your job because you didn't, couldn't, or wouldn't get vaccinated? You're looking at somebody who works for cash now for the last year and a bit because I'm not allowed to work for my employer. So how many of you? I'm certain there's people in the comments that are in the same, or at least were at some point, or know somebody in their lives. And think about what that means. You are not allowed to work. I have 2 young children and a wife. You are not allowed to work and provide for your family, lest you partake in the medical experiment that we need to conduct here now. So, and that's where my physical abuse comes into play. Before I touch anything to do with COVID, anything like that. Unlawful arrests. I mean, I just brought up George Floyd, right? And I'm not here to argue about the details of that story. But if you've ever dealt with police in your life in person, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say unlawful arrest or unjust imprisonment. If you're Canadian, you should know the name Dean Clifford. If you don't know the name Dean Clifford, when this show is over, which won't be very much longer, I suggest you look him up and look at his story and what happened to him at the hands of our quote unquote government. Unlawful arrest occurs so often. Wars cover every single form of abuse, but I put war into physical abuse because that's what I at the end of the day, that's what I boil it down to. It's for the rest of us and for that soldier, that soul dyer, they go through all of the abuse, and we go through all of it except the physical if you're not participating in the war. Drugs. Think about how often it's been proven that the CIA, the FBI, whatever 3-letter acronym corruption had been the provider of drugs to a particular region, community, state, or country. They've funded both sides of drug wars since drugs have been commercialized, we'll say. And then they have a war on drugs. Now, how ironic is that? Create a problem in order to provide a solution. And you can draw your own conclusions from there about how else physical abuse is occurring in modern times, because there's things you can't say or you get your stream taken down or whatever. But the idea of masking, if you were to ask me prior to COVID having started how I felt about the idea of wearing a mask during a respiratory viral pandemic, I would have said it's probably a good idea in really crowded areas, I guess. And I guess to some degree, I still think that way. I don't know. But I've always been about personal choice, personal liberty. So the idea of that being forced upon me, or my participation is now no longer lawful, illegal, and I'm not allowed to participate, that becomes abuse. We're talking about, this is supposed to be a society. This is supposed to be a shared community that I'm supposed to have to be able to partake in. And there's been no contract signed, so there's no strict rules that are clearly enforceable when it comes to how this society operates. Just so we're clear on that. So I've made my case. I've said my piece on why I think the idea of domestic abuse in, say, a relationship, the cycle, the pattern, the stages of that, how it occurs and why it occurs, because again, it's about gaining and maintaining control. I've made my case. I believe, I hope that form and that stage and cycle of abuse is very close, if not identical, to the relationship we're sharing now with our governments as quote unquote citizens. So, with that in mind, there is a link here, and I am well aware that trolling exists, so there's a possibility of trolls coming in or whatever, but the link has been posted. Again, you don't need a camera if you don't want to use one. You can use just a microphone. The idea here is to allow listeners a chance to have their voice heard, because when you're listening to media, or when you're listening to even some of the podcasters and stuff that you might listen to, I don't think that option is very often afforded to listeners, the chance to join in and have their say. I'm not claiming to be the first person to ever think of it. I'm certain people are doing it, but I don't think that happens on a large scale. So if you're listening and you want to hop on and have your say either way, agree with me, disagree with me, and I'll take this time while I see if anybody wants to take me up on the offer. I have a plan for a weekly episode that is strictly just the idea of call in chat. Um, the episode would just start with a couple of minutes of current events of what's happened today or yesterday or whatever, what's hot button, just to get a chat rolling, and the link would be posted immediately as soon as the episode started, so people could even queue up. I can have up to 10 people in here at one point, 9 plus myself. And you can come in one by one and just kind of bring up what's on your mind. It doesn't have to be about what was said at the start of the episode. That's just kind of an icebreaker to get the episode started, and then you could hop on and have your say, talk about something, bring something up. If you got something on your mind that's happening locally in your community, then you might want to hop on and promote it or talk about it or get my opinion on it, whatever it is. So we do have a guest here now who's hopped in. Looks like Gunther. So I'm going to bring him on here now. Just give me one quick second. Are you, do you have this stream running on somewhere else?
No, it's on my phone.
Because there's a pretty big echo coming from you.
Oh, you know what? I haven't turned the speaker on my phone is really bad. Let me turn that off for a minute and see if that helps.
Now
Hello?
your echo's gone. Your echo's gone.
Yeah. Okay, my echo is probably caused by the external speaker, but my speaker on my phone is crap. I can barely hear you, but I'll go this way.
Okay, that's perfect. And again, if your video gets choppy at all, you don't have to have it on. I just want to repeat that for people who are listening as well, because they'll see you with your video on and they might think to themselves they're compelled to have video. I just want to remind people, if you're not comfortable with the video aspect, you can certainly come on and just use your microphone. So Gunther, welcome. Do you have something you want to say about anything you heard there this evening?
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of points there. It is sort of like a Stockholm syndrome I'm finding with a lot of people, where they'll make excuses for the wrong behavior that we're seeing, and that's the part I get really frustrated with. I don't know how to be patient with these folks.
Patience is a virtue that I wish I had more of. I might appear pretty calm here on stream, but personally, I generally do get a little upset, especially lately with what's been coming out. I understand at the start you were skeptical of these people who sounded crazy and they were conspiracy theorists. Like I get it. But it's been a while now, and there's been time to reflect, and I think it's time to start now. And this statement goes for both our sides. I think it's time we start admitting some things to each other.
Yes, I agree.
Gunther, if you remember my truth or fear porn rant that I did, we've got some admitting to do on our side as well, or some apologizing to do for say some claims made. But definitely, the way some of us on our side have been treated in our personal and our professional lives, it's been rough.
It has been, and prior to COVID itself, but also because of COVID, I've delved into the laws, a lot, and the things you discover that through time that they've changed things to garner themselves more power over time. It's interesting how they've managed to make it happen without anybody really realizing what's happening. When you see ultimately the power that they have, they're way beyond what power they have. Basically, they're our trustees that are supposed to be managing our property. That's it. They're not supposed to be controlling us and doing things. They have the power to control commerce, to control business activity, because making profits is not it's not really lawful, because the law is simple. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, but the law boils down to the Bible. It's love thy neighbor as thyself. That's the whole of the law. Love thy neighbor as thyself, and God above all else. Now, I know
Well,
everybody's got some different views.
I will point out that anybody who questions that as being true or not, when you do go to a courtroom, there is a book that you generally are asked to swear on when you're promising that you're telling the truth, and there's a reason that book is chosen.
Well, yeah, because in the book itself, it's telling you not to swear to anybody, make no swear to no one, make no oaths, not even to God Himself. And then when you walk into a courtroom and they ask you to swear on the Bible, you're proving to them in the court that you're an idiot, because you're swearing on the very book that tells you not to take any oaths or swear, or not even to God Himself. It's telling you that right in the book. So right there, you first prove to the court you're an idiot and granting them jurisdiction, because now you're a ward of the state. You're not smart enough to handle your own affairs. And so that's why they use that trick. Now, of course, they don't do that so much anymore, and they use other tricks to grant the jurisdiction. But the thing it boils down to is that simple. And you don't necessarily have to believe in God to understand that principle of law. It's built into the system. It's built into our world. It's part of our DNA, and everything's mixed together. It's just a fact that you got to be good and do the right thing.
Yeah, and it's being used again in this abuse pattern that we're seeing to control us through. I mean, you could look at that as psychological, emotional, spiritual abuse, however you want to look at that. But through the court system, it becomes financial abuse as well. And through false imprisonment, through that court system, or quote unquote justice system, becomes physical abuse. Gunther, we got 3 more people here lined up behind you, so I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to bring Liz on. I'm going to ask Liz to unmute her mic there and get her points across. But thanks for hopping on, Gunther. And if you have an opportunity to join on our next stream, we're going to have, I might possibly have an episode just for this type of concept, where people can come on and have a bit longer to, kind of have their say.
Yeah,
so thanks,
no
thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and thanks for doing the show. I'm enjoying it. I'll see you after.
Cheers. All right, we got Liz here. Liz, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. How are you, Liz?
I'm good. I think this is a great topic. Hi, Dana.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I just wanted to come in and socialize with you fine folks.
I think talking about the abuse is pretty important, because I think we've all been sort of indoctrinated into it, actually, especially the last 20 years or so. In other words, I don't know. I don't know where to start. There's so much. But if you've ever been abused, and I have, it starts with fear, a little bit of fear. And then, when they need you to comply, they do some more fear. And, you start questioning, well, what's going on here? And you try and be a little defiant. And there's a punishment or a coercion or something, to keep you down and to shut you up. And, it's a vicious cycle. And I think our problem today is that because all of our governments are doing this, right down to your municipality, and they're the ones that are enforcing mandates and enforcing all kinds of crap on everybody. And they're building more fear now. They've got the digital ID, and we've got the WHO and the World Pandemic Treaty, and the consequences of that to all of us. So anybody who's a little bit aware, I mean, we all know that something's wrong. We all know that we're being manipulated. And, we've had protests, we've written letters, you send emails to your representatives, and nobody's listening. And where do you run? I mean, it's not like you can run to, a woman's shelter or a man's shelter because your spouse is beating you. This is the government.
We don't run. So
But
fear. I'm just going to talk about fear for 1 second because I'm an end of life coach. So most of the hypotheses we're going through right now is everybody's going around afraid they're going to die. They're going to die from COVID. They're going to die from somebody sneezing on them. Die because they got a mask on, And at the end of the day, I mean, death is very much a part of life. So for starters, let's remove that fear, right? We're all going to hit the soil at some point in time. The government has been, for the last 65 years, has been ramping up for this time that we're experiencing right now. There's like 200 families that are responsible for everything that's going on, right? They do have the power and they do have the money, and they do have the technology to kind of game plan everything that we're going through right now. However, AI doesn't quantify the human spirit, right? They don't know how powerful we are when we all actually come together. And to deal with your fear, I find personally, the best thing that you could possibly do is get active. It's like if I sit at home and I've got my hands under my ass and I'm in these chat rooms, get out of the chat rooms, because the chat rooms are just this cycle of madness where we're re-educating each other over and over again about stuff that we already know. But it's just getting out there and even just doing a small part by waking up your peers and your neighbors. I mean, depression comes from thinking about the past. Anxiety comes from thinking about the future. All you can do is make the best decisions that you can make right now, and don't comply, don't cooperate, and use your fear as power to move forward. No one says that life is supposed to be perfect. And I fundamentally believe in the Bible, right? I do. Everybody has different beliefs and I completely respect it. But at the end of the day, it's about the journey and it's about the experience. And we chose to be here right now because we're the warriors. You're awake, Liz, because you're a warrior, right? You have a role to play in what's about to happen and what we're going through. And you're brave to come on here and share your voice. And that's your gift. So turn that fear into motivation. And, just they don't get to own today. Don't give them today because we're not dead yet. Do you know what I mean? Like, why are we all lying down and pretending like we've already been steamrolled? We're just getting started. We're just waking up everybody. Once we get everybody up on their feet, it's going to be like, what the hell? These 200 families? We're like 7 billion people. Move the fuck over, right?
Amen. Amen.
that sounds wonderful. I wish it was happening. We've been trying to do that for a couple of years now anyway.
Well, that's early birds, right? There's people that wake up in the morning. There's people that wake up in the afternoon. We're the wake up crew. We're had our coffee. We read the paper. We're like, oh shit, look what's fall for today, right? So what do we do now? And we just have to be patient. Like, I talked to Rocco Galati when all of this started. Do you know who he is?
Yes.
Constitutional lawyer, and he told me that he's been awake for about 25 years. 25 years. Can you imagine how frustrated he was? Right?
I can't imagine how frustrating it would be to understand the system in a way that you would describe as being awake and having to be a constitutional lawyer in a constitutional monarchy of Canada. That must be something else. So, Liz, do you have anything else on your mind that you'd like to get off? Because we do have another guest lined up just behind you here as well.
Okay, well, you can take me off. I'll just listen for a while.
Dana says she loves you. She's blowing you kisses there.
Love you too.
And you've gotten some nice support here in the comments. So, Liz, thanks for coming on. I mean, being able to come on and talk about being an actual personal victim of abuse, it's not easy. I have my own story that someday I'll tell.
But I just think sorry to interrupt, but I think
No, go ahead.
everybody's experiencing this, and it's getting frustrating. And
Yeah.
waking up is really good. It does help it. It does make you feel stronger. I went through that years and years ago, so I did all that work. But here we are, and we're still struggling. And I think some people don't even know what's going on. But it is very much like Stockholm syndrome.
It's a lot easier to figure this out when you know what's going on, because when you're reacting to abuse when you don't know you're being abused, it's a lot harder to cope with.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this stream, right, with this particular topic, is to draw that parallel and to kind of hit people in the face with it. That's probably not the best metaphor to use. In hindsight, I probably should try something else there, but you know what I mean. I want this to be on full display in front of you so that you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
This is how we're being treated. So yeah, I appreciate it, Liz, and
Okay.
hopefully you'll come on when we get a chance to do an episode that's fully on this topic.
Yeah, I will. Bye,
All
guys.
right, take care, Liz.
Hands.
All right, we also now have we have Darren, and I'm gonna let Darren introduce himself.
Hey everybody, I'm my name's Darren. It's like right here, I believe, somewhere on the screen over there. There we go. There it is. Where? Anyways, I got one statement, and I want to know, where the heck is your kitchen witch?
She is in the background.
Well, get her out, bro.
Well, now that you say that, I'll say she's in making me a sandwich, so she's not able.
There you go. No,
Oh.
you're just nasty. All of a sudden, a hand comes in the camera, slap.
Yeah, I'll be on the couch tonight. But how are you, Darren? Did you agree, disagree, or somewhere in the middle on some of the things I was saying about the parallel situation here?
Oh, it's craziness. I mean, we're as everybody's been saying, they're all talking about being, Bible believers, and I mean, I'm a Christian and since a little wee kid, and I've always been taught to trust the government, and we're all, they're going to have our best interests in mind, but it's like, for the last, I don't know how many years now, I was just like, no way, there's no way, I mean, we see, it doesn't matter which side it is, the left or the right, they're all the same. They just, it's about lining their pockets, and so I mean, I don't know if anybody else here knows about constitutional, the stuff that Shane's been doing for 100,000 years now.
Feels that way.
And but it's such a great thing to see. If something like that actually, if enough people would wake up, I think it was like something like 3%, something like that, would be able to just change the tide. And it's like, that's not a lot of people. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm ready to sign that paper right now, right?
It doesn't take much.
I know.
People
Especially now we see what's going on between, pissed off Paulette there. He's some kind of great, wonderful person, but he's a total piece of crap. He's don't get, what is it? Paid opposition. That's, and then, we see the other guy.
He's Darren. He's literally paid opposition in that he is paid by the government to oppose the government.
Exactly.
Right?
I know.
As you think about this, right? The government pays the opposition. Parliament pays the opposition, just like they pay the governing party, just like they pay, Elizabeth May to sit up in the gallery and pick her nose. You know what I mean? Like they pay everyone. So the opposition party is all paid opposition by definition.
Exactly. I know. It's like I've been watching a few these kind of petitions, get these lawyers out, and they're all going to go to court, and it's like I can't remember the lady who was that was part of the group, and she actually went there, and they completely locked her out. They said, no, we're not. We don't care what you've got. You're not coming in. You're done. You didn't even get your day in court. And it's like I see all these people with these lawyers, and it's like, well, you can't play their game on their playing field, right? It's got to be, like I said, I put a thing in long time ago about a hard drive, how it's made, and the foundation is cracked, and if you can't, you have to just sort of brand new hard drive, right? And I love the Constitution for that, because it will change the playing field completely.
I can't agree with you anymore, Darren. You said something about Christianity. Now, we're not going to get theological here at all. I'm not even necessarily what most people would describe as Christian. Although I kind of toy in that vicinity, but there's two forms of Christianity that I've noticed in the world. And it boils down to the way people like their cigarettes. Some people like light cigarettes and some people like the full flavor. So here in the West, for the most part, we have light cigarettes. We have Christianity light. We have Christians in name only. We have that kind of thing, which is actually to take the Lord's name in vain. Because to take the Lord's name is to marry. That's what you do when you marry someone. You take their name, right? If me and Dana were to marry right now, she would hypothetically take my name, and that would be her marrying me and becoming mine. So that's what it means to be a Christian. To call yourself Christian is to take on the name of Christ and therefore the teachings of. To do so in vain is to take the Lord's name in vain, which is what I see with Christianity light. It's people who go to church on Easter and Christmas, and other than that, drink, gamble, participate in usury, and all this stuff that's completely illegal. But there's also full flavor Christianity. Some might call it Eastern Orthodox Christianity. Some might call it old school Christianity. There's different ways you can say that, but I like that a little bit more. It has a little more je ne sais quoi, a little more cojones. It's a little bit closer to something that's more principled, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, the type of Christianity that I've always sort of adhered to is the 12-step program talks about having a higher power, right? And that's okay. I mean, but for myself, it's recognizing that there's something bigger than me, and like Dana was saying about how people are getting all crazy in their minds. It's like, well, for me and anybody else who wants to, it's like, prayer is an amazing thing. It releases so much out of your system. It's like, okay, I don't have to be overwhelmed by everything, right? Okay, yeah, the government's all cuckoo and they're trying to do stuff with us, but taking time every day just to read the word or say a prayer, how hard is that? And for me, it gives me some release. It's like when this all first started happening 3 years ago, when I first met you, I was a basket case. We remember me. I was like, as you notice, I don't have a beard anymore. The hair is gone. That was a mask. I was covering myself up because I was so afraid. I didn't want anybody to see who I really was. And now it's like, no, I don't care. I'm there. I'm front and center. And this is me. If you don't like me, well, go somewhere else, right?
Well, Darren, I always knew you were a beautiful human being, and now you get to prove it to me on live stream.
On beard.
Yeah,
he had quite a beard. I mean, a beard that would make me look clean shaven right now, and had some long hair. I mean, you said you looked like a mess. Those are your words, not mine.
Yeah. Right? It was a mask.
Yeah. No, I get it. Absolutely. Darren, thanks for coming on for kind of just giving those words. I think you gave us a lot to think about, and what you said about prayer, even if it's not prayer, even if it's a couple of minutes of silent meditation.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Talking to yourself can be just as powerful as attempting to speak to somebody else. Just that personal reflection that you take a couple of minutes out of the day to just, completely disconnect from everything.
Absolutely.
That's just as powerful. Darren, if I have this on again, would you want to come on and kind of have a discussion if we ever do this again?
Yeah, definitely. I just want to add one more thing to what you were just saying, is that this has nothing to do with religion or prayer or anything, but they've talked about how the mind has plasticity. It can be molded, and just taking 15 minutes a day and quietening the mind and the body and the spirit will do so much for your mind. It's sort of like reorganizing your thoughts. Go
You
ahead,
know,
Dana.
something else that I've learned lately, I never really quite understood the whole concept of the mind as a dangerous master, but a wonderful servant.
Yeah.
So when we can acknowledge the simple acknowledgement of the fact that we can be programmed, do you know what I mean? That's not
Mm-hmm.
coming from our true self or our higher self or our own perspective. It makes it a lot easier to the fears and to be able to kind of override it and go like, okay, I feel this way because that's what they're instilling in me. That's not really, I'm not really
Mm-hmm.
at risk. Like
Yeah.
remember last year when everybody was like locked down and we were all afraid the Gestapo was going to come to our house?
Yeah. Mm.
Like when you think about it, if Peter McCullen can come online and be like, I don't think they're going to come get me because I'm so insignificant because I can't get my message out around the world. Do you know what I mean? But our
Right.
conscious thoughts, like our programming would say, oh, we see these images online of the things that are happening in other countries. Automatically, we associate that with us. But when we take a minute and realize it, it's like, they're really not that much of a threat at this point. They're going to be a threat. It's going to be a threat that we give to them. We
Yeah.
give them our power, right? Play all day long. We're not taking.
Exactly. A cool saying that I have, it's I can be what I will to be. There's a big I and a little I in that statement, and it's the little I is the ego, but our big I is, who we really are, right? Our subconscious. It's what dictates everything that happens in our life. And we can make it whatever we want, right?
We need to make it the boss because that's how
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
we run
We
into
can affect everything around us.
100% because we're all connected. Whether we
Yeah.
believe it or not, we're all connected.
Yeah, at the quantum level for sure.
Well, and that's the thing about the chat rooms. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about the chat rooms for just a second. So, because this episode is called, why I want to divorce my government. Okay. So,
Oh, it is?
yeah. Why I divorced my first husband. Okay. So he was explaining to me, the psychologist was explaining to me some things that were going on with him at the time. But it's like we experience something, right? And then when we experience it again or we talk about it, we get that same sensation. It's called adrenal masturbation. Okay. That's the psychological term for it. So hypothetically, if you win the jackpot for the next 20 years, every time you walk into a room and you go, I won the jackpot, right? You're going to get that feeling, which is why you keep doing it. It's the same way with negative things, right? So if everybody is spending all their time in chat rooms watching the same thing over and over again, we are programming ourselves. We are actually affecting our own psychological well-being by putting all that crap in there all the time, right?
Mhm.
So we have to make a conscious effort to encourage our friends and family to know there's a problem. Now, what are we going to do about it? And the minute we take the shift to do progressive things like preparing and educating, things get better.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
couldn't have said it better myself, and I tried to do an episode on that the other night. So that's excellent. Darren, I'm going to let you go so that me and Dana can wrap up the episode because we're approaching the 1 hour mark here now.
Okay. Blessing.
Before I let you go, I'll leave you with this. May you be in heaven a full half hour before the devil knows you're dead.
Irish Rivers there, boys. I love you.
Take care, buddy.
Excellent, Shane.
All right, Dana. So do you, I have a sneaking suspicion you agree with my my assertion that we're in an abusive relationship here. Did you have anything else that you want to add to that equation at all, the pattern that we're in or anything along those lines?
Well, I have my own special relationship with the government. So my level of abuse is a little bit different. I think the biggest thing that, that we have to be aware of is that we can say no. We can say no. We can choose not to participate. We can say, no, I'm not going to let you needle rape me, No, I'm not going to let you tell me that you're going to take away my freedoms. Like, let's think about this for a second. We're human beings in our own bodies. How do you take somebody's freedom? You can't. What happens is we give it to them, right? So the number one thing is like, if you want to end an abusive relationship, you remove yourself from that relationship, right? It's like, I'm not going to stay in your house and let you kick the shit out of me every day. I'm going to say, hell no, I'm going to leave you in the house. I'm going to drop a match on it behind me when I leave, and I'm going to catch that fucking thing on fire, right? So when we get enough people on their feet and we're awake and we're aware and we start functioning as a community, we can break that cycle. But first, people have to break their own cycle and get out of the rut. Like, people are so, other thing about fear, let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about victimism, right? So we all think that we've got to, even when it comes to the vaccinated versus unvaccinated conversation, okay? So I've watched this all play out. I am unvaccinated. I had my business shut down. I got into a fight with the government. I got a new law made for myself. They threatened to have me arrested. Like, all of these things have happened. Now, as everybody is watching right now, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, it really doesn't matter, because this is a whole different animal. The vaccination shit was just to get us here. But the minute that we realize that the change that's going to have to happen in this country is not going to happen through our democracy, right? Right now, we've got Pierre Poilievre. I'm not a fan. We've got Fancy Pants, Mr. Seamus O'Regan's boyfriend up in Ottawa, right? We got this guy. And then we got Jagmeet Singh, who can't even go in his own country because I think they call him a terrorist or something. We have no options, right? And we have to stop waiting for Superman. We have to be the boss. Like, come on, people. Our children have not been married. They haven't had boyfriends and girlfriends. They haven't built homes. And we're all sitting down afraid we're going to lose things. We're going to lose the future for our children, right? So it's time to pull your pants up and say Superman and Batman and all those people only live in fairy tales. And all we have to do, I mean, we're 7 billion people. All we have to do is our part to hold the line. Our own little tiny piece of that puzzle. If it's something small, that's all that matters. And shag the abusers. Like, divorce that shit. Don't file your taxes. Don't use a debit machine. If they tell you that you have to have cash, walk out. What are they going to do? You offer to pay for things, right? Like up in Ontario right now, they're getting a whole new can of wax. Some people are going into restaurants and they won't allow them to pay in cash, right? So that's it. We ignore them. We go on about our happy merry life, and we ignore them, and we take back our power. And that's what Shane's all about. And I couldn't even watch because I was like, I'm not going to get in there, but I couldn't even watch because I was so excited about everything he had to say. I was like, look at him go, thank you for.
Well, God love you. That was very beautiful, and I love that rant. I think I might have to clip out that last little bit just to kind of share that last part around. Don't participate. That's why we called this episode "I Want to Divorce My Government," because we're recognizing the abuse cycle and we need to break it. But you have to, in order to first. Well, how does this go? In order to solve any problem, first you have to admit there is one, right? And there's a lot of people that won't admit to themselves or to others that there's even a problem. That's the part of the abuse cycle they're in right now. Unfortunately, it often has to get worse before people admit how bad it really is. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're trying to show it to you that we are in that abuse cycle. We can break it. All we got to do, as you said, is to stand together. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So hold the line. Do what you can in your capacity, whatever that may be. So yeah. All right, Dana, we're over the hour mark, so we're going to clue this up. Thanks for hopping on and joining in. Thanks to a couple of our guests who hopped in, a few people who put some solid questions in the comments. And before we go, there is an idea for this to be a bit of for a call-in type show to exist on this platform. So if that's something you think you might enjoy, give us some feedback, let us know. And also, to everybody who's sick of seeing my face and hearing my voice, tune in Sunday at 9:30 Newfoundland time, 9:30 p.m. Newfoundland time. Wherever you're watching this right now, it will be played there. Sunday, 9:30 p.m. Newfoundland time. extrapolate back to find out if you're in another part of Canada. She will be talking about digital IDs, and I believe centered around Newfoundland, possibly Canada.
Yeah, national.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I will. I'll be more of a background type in for that episode, and Dana's going to take the lead on that one, and I can't wait. So, anything you want to say before we shut her down, Dana?
No, I love you like a fat kid loves Smarties. I'm happy that you had such a successful podcast, and I can't wait to tell everybody about the digital ID from my knowledge, because that's that's the hill we have to die on right now. So, and we'll get it done. And you're amazing, and I totally think a phone in broadcast for you on Wednesdays would be brilliant, because like I'll interrupt your shit all the time because you have something to say.
I do need somebody to interrupt me constantly. That is a problem.
Thank you.
All right, Dana, thanks for coming on, and thanks to everybody. And before I let you go, as I used to always sign off, I'm going to bring that back. This one goes out to Darren specifically, if he's still listening. You people, you stay sovereign.